Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, where we will explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Join me on the first and third Thursdays on the Dr. Diane Show, where I have experts from around the country teaching you cutting-edge therapies on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. Please like and subscribe to my channel, Dr. Diane Hayden. I am so excited to have with me today my guest, Lisa Barrett. She is a registered art therapist and licensed professional counselor with a successful private practice in Connecticut. She is also a personal and professional coach, author, and speaker whose work focuses on self-empowerment, emotional wellness, and effective parenting and coaching skills. Lisa has been featured in local newspapers and has expanded her reach through podcasting, sharing practical tools and insights to help individuals cultivate calm, clarity, and live more empowered lives. With over 20 years of experience teaching art, Lisa also worked as a commissioned designer and artist for both residential and commercial projects, bringing creativity, insight, and depth to all aspects of her work. So welcome, Lisa. How are you today?
I am very good. Thank you very much, Diane, for having me on the show.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm excited to talk about all things art today. And actually, I didn't even mention this in your bio, but you just wrote a book, correct?
I did. So the goal for writing the book is to really be able to reach a broader audience to help them to live more of an empowered life, which also allows them to tap into their creativity, and beyond my clinical practice. So it's been sort of like a jumping off point, and it's been received really well. So I'm super excited about that. And being able to be on a podcast like this just even expands it out more to a broader field. So that is really my passion, to help people to live more an empowered life.
That's awesome. Yeah. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about your background, though. I mean, obviously, you've been in art has been your career, and I think it's interesting when people think about things like art or music, and they don't necessarily make the connection between that and, let's say, therapy or coaching, and
Mm.
kind of like, how did you transition one into the other?
Well, interestingly enough, when I was young, I was like 15 years old, I had my own personal trauma, and I did not know at the time that I was doing art therapy to help myself to heal.
Interesting.
So I would
Yeah.
be going to the art table and just drawing. And oftentimes, when people are working through something, there's a schema. So there's repeated types of images in different contexts, forms, shapes, etc. And you get to watch the evolving process. And so I was actually doing that, and I did not know it was art therapy at the time.
Wow.
So fast forward, I've always loved art, but I've always loved everything psychology too, right? I wanted to be a psychologist, but instead settled for being a very successful, licensed professional counselor, which I'm more than happy to go that route, and a registered art therapist. And so those two things have always been a connection to me on a deep level, even though I didn't know it. So I started out, well, I taught art classes. Let me just preface and say I went to the Art Institute of Philadelphia.
Mhm.
I showed up one day at one of the community centers, and I applied for a position as part-time art teacher. Didn't even know I was getting into. I was really young, green behind the ears, the whole bit, got the job. And I literally had taught art classes in community centers and park and recs for over 15 years.
Wow.
And it was really interesting because I'd get a lot of repeat kids. And so I got to watch them evolve and grow and develop. And in that context, I got to see through their imagery how they were working things out, even though they weren't verbalizing it. So it was really fascinating. And then fast forward, I got into residential treatment facilities as a therapeutic recreation director, working in conjunction with all of the therapists there. And I remember my very first job, I was walking around the campus and there was an in school, it was a school on ground, so they had to attend, right? And I remember they were teenagers about maybe 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, maybe. And they were just coloring these like printed out images of like baby kittens and dogs and stuff. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, there's a disconnect there. I don't get it. And so it was new. How do you like what you're doing in art? Went up to them. No, I don't like it at all. They treat us like babies. And I knew right then and there intrinsically that I was going to start implementing all kinds of expressive arts as part of their therapy. So that's what I did. I started teaching art classes on grounds that were pushing them. So the very definition of art therapy, as is teaching in regular school systems, is to introduce a slight stressor to help the brain to think. And so with art therapy, I introduce like very simplistic directives, very simplistic, because then it's all on their end. How do they want to create it? But it's enough, right, to give them a slight stressor to be able to work through how they are going to express it out, right? And then I also ended up teaching drumming classes, and we had poetry classes and dance classes and all this kind of stuff, but it was all very therapeutic. And I noticed this trend that these kids were healing faster and working their program better and more efficiently with their social workers and therapists, etc., because they had something to look forward to, something that they loved. Like they even wrote their own contract to be in the drum line, right? So they even wrote what their behaviors were if they were unacceptable and if the team decided to kick them off, right, inappropriate behaviors. So it was just a beautiful process. And then from there, it just flourished and blossomed. And I just kept going in that direction until I eventually, got my bachelor's, then my master's, right? And then became licensed with the state of Connecticut. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we talked about that because I think it's so fascinating, the connection and impact that art and creative expression, right, has on us, even people who have not had a trauma, right? Like just
Yes.
how soothing it is for people or stress reducing, that kind of thing. But if you look at it like taking this to the next level with people who have had trauma or are working through, healing some type of even physical issue, I would say, or mental issue,
Hmm.
how impactful art can be on something like that. It's really, and I don't think many people would draw that conclusion.
Mm. Well, it's interesting. Even to this day, people don't realize that art has been around since like the 1930s, you know, and it actually was
Well,
started.
maybe even before, if you consider petroglyphs,
There you go.
right?
Here's, if you really want to talk that far back.
Thousands of years. Yeah,
Yes, exactly. I love that you said that, right? Because people don't make that connection either, because that was
right.
their storytelling process, right? And
Yeah.
how they communicated. But here's something else. Our very first forms of writing is scribbling when we're little kids, and people don't make that connection either, right? So
Yeah.
that's how powerful it is, right? And it doesn't matter, you're right, whether or not you've had a serious trauma, because it can also work for people that have some type of physical ailments, etc. It's just what happens in the process, right? When I see any clients is because they're doing something that they actually are relaxed in doing and that they actually enjoy, what happens to their central nervous system? It shifts to the parasympathetic nervous system,
Mhm.
which is the calming part of you. And when you're in that calming place, right, we can start to talk. Things start to come out. They are in a more trusting space. So it works really wonderfully. And I go above and beyond. We do music and we do yoga and we do tactile expressive arts like sewing. And all of it has the same effect on the central nervous system and puts you into that part of the brain that is creative.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So we're gonna talk a lot about your book in this podcast. But one thing I wanted to point out that I noticed is your book is intentionally concise at only 66 pages.
Yes,
So you have a purpose for that, right? Like a reason why you wanted to present your ideas in kind of this more shorter, practical format.
absolutely. I myself have been reading self-help books forever, with all of the classics, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra. I mean, you name it. I've read them all. And I learned so much from them all the time. Okay. But the reason why I wanted to have a very concise 66-page book, because A, it's small, it's only a 6 by 9, it's thin, you can take it with you. So it's kind of like having, as somebody had quoted to me, a therapist in your pocket,
I love it.
right?
Yeah.
Because when you are in the midst of stuff, everybody needs a little bit of a reminder. So then you just take the book out and, oh, okay, let's go to the neutral zone. That always works. Always works. In the neutral zone, you can find calm clarity. So these are two things that I've coined. The neutral zone basically is getting out of your emotional parts of your brain, which is the amygdala and parts of the basal ganglia, and shifting to the prefrontal cortex. There is no emotions up there. It doesn't have that function. It can't function that way. If we can get there, even for brief moments, right, that is our opportunity to now decide what we can do and to reframe, do a coping skill, scream or yell if you have to get it out, right? And then how do I problem solve this? How do I go to creative possibilities? And you can only solve a problem in the mindset of what I call calm clarity. You can't solve it in stress. You will never solve it in stress.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. Well, I love it. I love these terms you've coined and the fact that you can pop your book right in your purse and take it everywhere you go, basically, because you can't get more practical than that. We're going to talk about a lot more. We're going to take a quick break right now. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we'll be exploring more with Lisa Barrett. She's a registered art therapist and licensed professional counselor. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back in the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. But before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to contact me. You can find me at www.drdianehayden.com or at either of my two publications, www.naturalnutmeg.com and www.essentialnaples.com. And you can learn more about my guest today, Lisa Barrett, at her website, which is www.touchedbyarttherapy.com, and that is spelled TOUCHEDBYARTTHERAPY.com. So right before we left, Lisa, you were telling us a little bit about just the power of simplicity with your book, and you mentioned a couple of things that people can learn by reading your book, obviously, and then practice something called the neutral zone. And so let's get into that a little bit more. What is the neutral zone and why is
Mhm.
it so important for, balancing your emotions to make, better decisions, honestly?
Yeah, I love teaching this practice. And it's so funny because the adults that I have, I work mostly with children as young as 5 in adolescence. But the adults that I work with, when they use this practice, they always come back and they share such positive results. And I just love hearing that and to see how they are self-empowered now, right? So the neutral zone comes with, I'm going to give an example, which is in the book, right? So you're driving along, somebody cuts you off, right? We all take the hit of emotion because let's face it, it came out of the blue. We're startled, we're reactive, right? Of
Right.
course we are, right? And we want to make sure we're okay. And then we're mad, which is also normal,
Right.
right? So we take all of those hits of emotions, right? And then it's now up to us to decide what we do with it. Okay. So the way to get into the neutral zone is to realize it's already in the past. You're okay. Isn't it wonderful that I'm okay? Thank you for me being okay. Right? Shifting, reframing it. This is getting yourself into the neutral zone, right? Because isn't that a fact? The fact is, I'm okay. Right? And so it takes our sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, and freeze, right? And it takes it down and shifts it into the parasympathetic nervous system. And neutral zone is all about facts. It's not saying stuff didn't happen. Of course it happened. It's not saying that you're not going to take that hit of emotion when something happens. Of course you are. But it's always about our choices. How long do we want to stay in that emotion? How much do we really want that to upset us? And how many times do we repeat the story over and over and over and over and over again? So some people will get that happen to them. They'll go to work. Do you know what happened to me today?
Yep.
They go
Yeah.
home. Do you know what happened to me today? That was so in the past. And they're
And
just,
people don't realize like how much first of all the stress of just the situation, right? But then when you continue to keep
mhm,
telling the story, keep staying in that state, how much that stress is impacting you, because it's not easy. I mean, as you're sitting here saying, okay, like, but you're basically just like breaking it down, like you said, the facts, right? So it's a fact that yes, you got cut off. It's also a fact that you're okay, nothing happened, right? So you should calm down now and walk away. But
mhm,
doing that is so hard for people, right?
mhm.
It's, I think they need to really understand what is happening in their body if they choose to stay in that fight or flight response, right?
Yes. And one of the, because working with kids, the energy they expend on hyper focusing that they failed the test or they might fail the test or whatever, right? Already blocks their ability to think and remember the answers.
Right.
It's so much wasted, expended energy that you can actually turn it around, calm yourself down, and now redirect your energy into other things and become more present. So the neutral zone is always about getting present and accepting that that's a fact. It's a fact. It happened, and also it's in the past. So can we move on? And if I do need to do something about it, what do I do about it? Because sometimes there are bigger things that happen that we need to clear out,
Right.
right? Which do require some emotions. Grief comes up, we need to cry, right? Something really big happens, we need to maybe scream to get it out of our system, right? So it's about allowing that to happen. And it's really okay, again, to go back to the neutral zone and saying, you know what? I'm sad. I'm sad my mom died today. I can also be happy, but I'm sad too. And it's okay if I'm feeling a little off. It's just a fact. But what happens is we attach so much emotionality to things that it drains our energies, like you said,
Mhm.
right? You can just be off, but we automatically go into I'm off. Then I keep telling that story. I feel really crappy. That's going to ruin my day. And then we make more things that are around us coming into our field also bad. Because what are we doing? We're seeing it through the eyes of a place that isn't coming from our truth, which is our heart. So that leads me into externals and internal, right? Which I talk about in the book, right? Everything external is your people, places, things, and situations around you. So I like to tell people, okay, when you bite into an apple, right? Or open it up with a knife, right? What do you see? The core. That's its life source. That's where the seeds are, right? When you cut into an onion, the most potent part of the onion, the strongest, right? It's right in the middle. It's its core, right? And then everything else is around it, right? And so we're that way. Our core is our heart center, our love. Okay. That's where our creativity comes, our neutral zone, our peacefulness, our empathy, our kindness, right? All of those things come from our core. Externals, people, places, things, or situations, they are all going to be there, right? But I keep talking about choices. It's our choice how we allow that to affect us. Do they influence us sometimes? Of course, like that guy cutting you off. Of course. But it's to what extent we allow it. Because we can always get ourselves through the neutral zone, right? By just talking to ourselves. Oh, that happened. Thank God I'm safe. Okay, it's in the past. He must be having a bad day. I don't know. Right?
Yeah.
And we get into that neutral zone, and then it's like, okay, do I need to count backwards from 5? That helps to get into the prefrontal cortex too, right? Because in the prefrontal cortex, all it knows is facts, figures, science. That's it. Organization. It knows nothing else. And if you think of the brain and you look at the pictures of the amygdala and the basal ganglia, they're so tiny. And if you look at the picture of the prefrontal cortex, it's huge. Can we use it in proportion?
Yeah,
Can
sure.
we can we go there where the biggest source is and tap into it? Because it's at our availability every single day, all day long. And we can reset, reset, reset all day long.
I think the hardest thing, though, for people that you mentioned is recognizing that they have a choice. That's the hardest thing. So many people get into this mindset that things happen to them
Mm-hmm.
and they have no choice. Like they have no control. It's
Mm-hmm.
control, choice, like whatever, responsibility, whatever the word is that you want to use. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest thing that I think people need to either learn or accept, or whatever, whatever stage they're in, is that there's always a choice, right? Something can happen to you, and then you have a choice how you react to it and how long you continue to think about it.
Absolutely. And that's where that beautiful neutral zone is because it gives you choices. When you're in that neutral zone, there is no reactivity. I talk about that too. Reactivity comes from emotionality and it is really disempowering. You're ultimately saying that, oh, all of the externals are determining how I should feel and my value and my worth and my moods, and that I'm not empowered. So not true, right? We want to try to get to that place of the neutral zone because it doesn't have that emotionality, because then we can go into action. Instead of reaction, action is a step of empowerment, right? And it's a conscious choice, isn't it? And if you make a choice and it didn't turn out, oh well, make another choice. Isn't that how we learn,
Right.
right? A lot of times too, it's a double-edged sword with people. They get an emotion and then they get resistance to the emotion. I don't want to feel angry. I don't want to feel scared. I don't want to feel anxiety. It's like, well, you do feel it. And when you add that extra level, now you're doing self-deprecation, right? So now there's even more stress. So
Exactly.
let's break it down, and just take one thing at a time. So I even tell the 5-year-olds that I work at, can you just say, I feel mad? Because emotions in themselves, I talk about this a lot, emotions in themselves, they're not bad, they're not wrong, they're all just emotions. And we're all human and we're going to go through the gamut of them at different times in our day, right? And the goal is not to be hippie happy all the time. No. It's like we don't go from one extreme to the next. I want to live
Right.
a happy, happy life. Well, that's great. But, we do have a lot of things we need to balance all day long too. So can we just go to peaceful? Imagine if everybody was just more calm, especially in this day and age. And that's what I'm trying to teach here with self-empowerment in the book and what I teach in my practice. And quite frankly, I live and breathe every day. There's nothing I don't say or do that I don't teach, because then I would have something that would be a disconnect, right?
Mhm.
So you have to walk your truth. And then I teach others, hopefully, to tap into their truth and how valuable that truth is and how much to honor it.
Yeah, and it is very empowering when you finally do realize that it is a choice. Like you're choosing to feel those emotions, you're choosing to hang on to the stress. Sometimes you're even choosing to inflict more stress on yourself. And when you realize, like, oh, I have a choice in all this matter. I mean, first, it's like people don't want that responsibility. They'd rather be like, oh, no, this stuff just happens to me. But when you really like work through that and really fully realize that no, this is a choice, then I think it becomes very empowering. So we're going to get into a lot more. This is super exciting. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we'll be talking more with Lisa Barrett. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back in the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden, and I'm talking today with Lisa Barrett. You can learn more about her at her website, which is www.touchedbyarttherapy.com, and that's spelled TOUCHEDBYARTTHERAPY.com. So, um, when we just went to break, Lisa, we were just talking about, how empowering it really is when you realize that you have choices in the way that you feel, in the things that you think about, all that kind of stuff. And you talk a lot in your book about just daily practices for self-care and self-love. And I'm sure some of that, incorporates, realizing that you have the ability to make these choices. But what are some simple daily practices that people can adopt to kind of cultivate more self-care, self-love, even emotional resilience?
Yeah, I love talking about this, and quite frankly, that's a part of my clinical practice that I work with all of my clients is how do you take care of yourself? How do you do self-care, self-love? A lot of people, it's a foreign concept. What do you mean self-care, self-love? I'm like, well, how do you love yourself? Well, I don't know. I'm kind of busy.
Right? People don't have time, or so they think.
That's the whole point, though, right? That's why they're reacting a lot to the externals and not feeling so empowered. So, there are simple practices that you can put into place. And I always recommend just starting out 10 minutes in the morning to change something. And then build that morning practice up so you're comfortable with it every single day. And then maybe add in a 10-minute in the evening. So, one of the things that I say is so important with electronics this day and age is do not go on them first thing in the morning. You want to create space for you in the morning. You don't want to have distractions. You don't want to be pulled in a million different directions right away. Because what are you doing? You're already starting and setting, right, yourself up for the day. So if it's so easy to get up every morning and immediately grab that phone and get yourself all worked up and all anxious and running around, can you take that energy? Again, shifting energy. Can you take that energy and slow down, right? Can you spend 10 minutes? And there's a whole variety depending on what people like in the morning. I love my coffee in the morning. I don't want to have any disturbances. I sit outside as soon as the weather's nice and I have my coffee. You know, 10 minutes of just connecting with nature. Can you do yoga and do some stretching and listen to some meditative music? Do you like your tea? Do you like to go for a walk? Exercising first thing in the morning is fine too, right? Any and all of these things, little tiny practices to set for yourself and make yourself a priority because people don't even allow themselves to be a priority to themselves. Especially women, what do? We are caretakers.
Mhm.
No, I have to take care of this one. No, you don't. You can take care of you first because when you take care of you first, you ultimately, A, are setting a power of example for the people that are around you. B, you're setting up a healthy boundary by saying, okay, I need my 10 minutes. Please don't interrupt me. Now you're teaching healthy boundaries. There's nothing wrong with healthy boundaries. They're beautiful things, right? C, you're also learning to say no, right? And then D, what you're doing is you're giving energy to you so that you can have a base before you go out into the world. And everybody else wants your energy now. And everything else wants your energy. And there's the lights, and there's the noises, and there's the people, and there's the car, and there's the traffic, and everything's noise. There's a lot of stimuli. We're all very overwhelmed in our society. So why are we going to start the day off being overwhelmed? Find you first, connect with you first. Now, these daily practices actually segue right into being able to tap into the neutral zone. Because if you can feel that peace first, ooh, you get comfortable feeling that peace, guess what? You want that peace.
Right.
As
I
much as,
think
go ahead.
I think people need to actually plug their phone in somewhere else other than the nightstand next to their bed, because I'm envisioning like people are listening to this thinking to myself, what? How am I going to do this? Like I wake up in the morning, I roll over, the phone's right there, I grab it, I start scrolling. That I guarantee you, like
Which is probably
90% of people do that.
absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
So my alarm is from my phone, but I set it in the kitchen because I happen to be able to hear it from the kitchen
Right.
to the bedroom, right? And so it's never, ever, ever in my bedroom. So it's never a go-to. I'm not tempted. And here's the other thing that people don't understand. There's all these electromagnetic waves that are emanating from all electronics. It's not healthy for your brain. It does affect your sleep when a phone is right next to you.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so again, setting that base for yourself every day is allowing you to be able to then master more successfully all the externals that come your way because you already started out calmer. You're setting the tone for the day. And then you could do little baby magic moments, I call them, throughout the day, right? To help maintain that, especially if something external. Take a break, go get some water, step outside, take a deep breath, count backwards from 5. Talk to yourself. Oh, okay. This is happening. What's the facts? Right? How do I solve this? And if you can't solve this, okay, then what am I going to do about it? Right? Because if you can put so much energy into trying to put out everybody else's fires, why can't you calmly go internally and be like, how can I resolve my own fires? Because I'm the one that's powerful here. And also, when you build those bases, okay, it's like the roots of the tree, it's the strongest part. When you build those bases, I love this analogy, right? The roots of the tree, no matter the storm, the roots stay in the ground pretty much, right? And the grace of the trees is that the arms catch nothing. They allow the storms to ebb and flow through them, right? There's no resistance. They just go with it. They just go with it. Okay. And that's part of getting into the neutral zone. Can we not resist and can we accept that we have these emotions and let them
Yeah. Yeah. You also mentioned the phrase, or you coined the phrase calm clarity. Can you tell
clarity?
us a little bit about that?
I love calm clarity. So, like I said before, it's not about being hippie happy, right? It's about can we be calm? When we can allow ourselves those moments, daily practices in the morning, and then maybe introduce a 10-minute, calming practice in the evening and little spurts, we are building up what calm clarity is. Because when we can be still, when we can be more peaceful, when we can resolve things through the neutral zone, we can easily tap into that calm clarity. So for example, sometimes I'm a triathlete, so I like to lay flat on my back and put my feet up when I'm done. It just helps me feel better.
Exactly.
My legs and my back and the whole bit. It gives my body a break for 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But often when I'm just relaxing, and really in tune with my body and my mind is clear, all of a sudden a solution comes up to a situation that I had, or an answer pops up because I'm calm. I can receive it. When we stay addicted to our stresses, we can't hear and receive what our own intuition is telling us. Our own intuition doesn't have to yell and scream. Sometimes it does. It has for me before, but most of the time it's pretty soft. We get more addicted to paying attention to all the external noise than we do to honoring what's going on here. So again, it's about building up daily practices and then little micro magic moments throughout the day. And then disconnect 45 minutes to an hour before you go to bed. Again, electromagnetic waves, it's like a light switch. You can shut down the electronics like right before you go to bed and pop into bed. The brain is still going, it's firing rapidly. You're
That's why
not,
people can't get to sleep.
thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
And then anything that they saw that was maybe violent or the news or upsetting or any of that or scary, right? It's going to affect their sleep because it's imprinted, right? It has an imprint.
I have a great story about that. Actually, it's so funny that I don't know how many people like make that connection either. Like, kind of the last thing you see at night is what, not necessarily that you're going to dream about that, but if
Right.
you saw, like you just said, you're going to see something scary or whatever. So I was just out in Arizona with a group of holistic practitioners. We were doing a retreat, and one of the women on the retreat was talking about, like, at the end of the night, we were kind of just like, we'd had dinner, then we were kind of all sitting around in a circle talking, blah, blah, blah. And then we would go to bed. Well, one night we were talking about like just scary stories for some strange reason, not even thinking about this. And comes to breakfast the next day and she's like, I had the weirdest dream. Like, we were talking about all that scary stuff or whatever. And she's like, I dreamt that my teeth were falling out. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
We can't
Yeah.
talk about stuff like that before you go to bed.
Yeah. There's an imprint,
Isn't
you
it
know?
crazy?
So there's nothing, if you do want to watch something funny on TV, that's different, right? Or silly, that's different. But still, try to withdraw from electronics at least 45 minutes. And that can be simply, the days are getting nicer. Go outside, go for a walk, go sit outside, right? Play a game, do any type of expressive arts, knit, cook, I don't know. Anything and everything like that is a form of art. So do something like that. Spend quality time with somebody, that type of thing. Yeah, read a book, you know? So that's going to also set you up for your morning. So you want to set yourself up for your day in the morning, and you want to set yourself up for your next morning in the evening
Mhm.
with these daily self-care, self-love practices. And I will honestly tell you this, that a lot of the adults, one of the phrases that I like to use in the neutral zone, and you can quote me, right? Isn't that interesting? So something happens, somebody's rude. Isn't that interesting? Why
Right.
is that great? It has no emotion. And so I have adults coming back. She's like, oh, I used that. I used, isn't that interesting? And it feels so much better. I'm less reactive. Isn't that interesting? He was rude. Isn't that interesting? He cut me off. Right? Isn't that interesting? I didn't get the job. Isn't that interesting?
And I'm going to say, it's so interesting how it just flips the way your mind works, right? When you hear a question like that, or just a statement like that, versus the other, versus putting all this emotion and things like that into it. I love this. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking more with Lisa Barrett. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. You can learn more about me at my website, which is www.drdianehayden.com. And I'm talking today with Lisa Barrett, and you can learn more about her at her website, which is www.touchedbyart.net. That's touchedbyart.net. So, we were just going to break, we were just talking about how interesting, there's that word again. How interesting it is when you maybe supply the brain with a question instead of a statement related to an event that happens, right? Like, instead of, somebody does something to you that upsets you,
Mm,
instead of immediately focusing on the emotion of it, like, oh, I'm mad about that, or he shouldn't have done that, or, she
mm,
was this or that, or whatever. When you say, how interesting that that person did this or said that, it flips just the way I think the synapses work in your brain to now it's focusing on a question versus the emotion of what just happened, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, and I apply that phrase to so many things, and it really just I love to use the word soften. It really softens the
Mm,
situation. Another question is, what are some possibilities that will come out of this? You know?
right,
And I
right,
I love to use that, especially with kids struggling in school. It's like, okay, or struggling with issues at the house, right? It's like, okay, how can you empower yourself by asking yourself, instead of focusing on the problem, what are some possibilities? What are some possibilities? And you're right. When you ask yourself a question, your brain now is like, oh, okay, so now I have to come up with the answer.
right.
Right.
And not focus on the emotion.
Right. Which is all going right back into that neutral zone.
Well, I love that you're doing all this work with just young adults and young professionals. I think it's so important to bring these tools to students and young
Mhm.
adults. So it's great that you are doing that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yeah. And I'm so honored to say that my book now is at the Yukon campus library.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so
Congratulations.
thank you. So I'm looking forward to doing some collaboration down there, and I would love to spread the word more. Because think about it, if our younger generation can understand, and really these principles are kind of basic, right? They're not really, this is why I wrote the book and kept it simple. They're not complicated. They may be complicated to put into practice and to really understand after a while, but to read them, right? They're very clear language and it's very short and to the point. I say KISS, that acronym, keep it short
Mhm.
and simple. Keep it short and simple, right? So it's really important that the younger generation going out into a world that is a world that is so unstable and unpredictable all the time and ever changing, right? That they're able to understand these principles to put into their own daily life to get through all of the things that they're getting through, but also when they go into their careers to be able to take it there too. And they can be a powerful example for other people.
Mhm.
So, for example, I have one adult right now. I was seeing her daughter, and we switched it to me seeing her, right? Because she was very stressed out as a parent, a single parent, right? And because she's been starting to learn self care, self love, and admitted that she never did that, she now is much calmer. And all of a sudden, the dynamics between her and her daughter have like completely shifted. Why? Because she shifted. And
Yeah.
that's the goal of reaching, all people, but even younger generations, right? To learn how to maneuver through this oftentimes crazy world,
Hmm.
right?
True.
And be able to go through it from a base of more calm clarity in that neutral zone. So they're not rocked by everything that is happening and living in fear and living in stress. And God knows the, mental health rise ever since COVID has never come down.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. And not only that, I mean, when I think of just how I grew up, in the 70s and 80s versus how kids grow up now,
Mm,
just like all of the pressure with social media
yes.
and, bullying, cyber bullying, and things like that. And even from the standpoint of, I feel like kids today have to are pressured to be so perfect at everything. Like the pressure put on them not only with academics but also sports or whatever, like hobby they might be in, if it's music
Mhm.
or dance or whatever. It's too much. It's crazy.
Yeah. They're so overwhelmed, which is why a lot of people will go home and just lose it. They're just very overwhelmed. And so it's more important now than ever before to be able to share these basic, tools, these easy and daily practical tools that, are part of the book to people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it really makes you, as a personal professional coach, it makes your approach very unique compared to other more traditional coaching models.
Absolutely, because I take the combination of everything. Now, mind you, I do my own mindful-based practices. I'm a competitive triathlete, I'm an
You
artist.
walk the talk.
I'm an artist, right?
Yeah.
I'm a speaker, I'm an author, all this kind of stuff, but I'm also a clinician, and all of it stems from, right, coming from my core. So when I work with anybody or everybody, right, and everybody, no matter the age, no matter the background, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, whether it's young, whether it's old, I take them as they come. And then I'm able to tap into what they need at that given moment to help them to grow. So that's why I love to apply that to coaching too, whether it is, like I said, personal or professional, because a lot of times we just need some tweaking,
Mhm.
right? And when you have an outsider just providing these things that most people would never think about, like, have you ever heard of the neutral zone
Nope, never.
or calm clarity,
Right.
right?
And they're simple,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah. So learning all these little things and me being able to address very specific things with each and every one in a different, more holistic, more well-rounded approach is like, aha, aha. I never thought of that. Oh, okay, I'll try it.
Yeah.
And
So
sometimes,
what is the final takeaway for our listeners from today? Any practical tool or words of wisdom or anything that you want to share for them?
yeah. So I do want to remind everybody that they're already empowered. And that's like a
Mhm.
really big, important thing. You're really all already empowered. What's in your core, what I talked about earlier, has always been there, will always be there. And it's at your availability anytime, 24/7. So that's the first thing, because you're all beautiful souls and you have everything that you need right inside of you. You just have to trust it. And that's part of the problem. We've learned not to trust ourselves, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you can easily start applying some basic tools like detaching from as much reactivity as you've been putting into things and trying to keep it softer. Softer language, softer reactions, going more quickly into, oh, okay, it's already in the past, and more into, how do I solve this? What would be a good solution? How do I move through this? Instead of problem focused, shift it to reframing to, what are the possibilities here? And it's okay if I don't like what's going on. I'm not saying you gotta love stuff,
Right.
right? Because stuff happens, right?
Yep.
But how can I open that up to other possibilities? And how can I shift it so it's more comfortable for me and everybody else around me? Because the power's all there.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yep. It definitely is. And I think the more people recognize and understand that they have a choice in everything, the more self-empowering that is, and the more people realize that,
And
you
where
know,
do you want to put your energy?
yes, exactly,
And grow
exactly.
your base. Your base is your foundation. And once it's so great because once you get that base and you're off of it a couple days in a row, right? You will feel it. And I have people say, "Oh my God, I got to get back to my daily stuff."
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's
And
so true.
that will make all of the externals so much more manageable.
Well, this has been amazing, Lisa. Thank you so much. Again, your website is touchedbyart.net, and it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for being on.
It is my honor, truly it is. So thank you so much. And it's been an enjoyable every single minute. And I really appreciate the opportunity, Diane.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I
And
want
I
to thank all of you, my listeners, for joining into the Dr. Diane Show. Please join me the first and third Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. I will see you guys back here next time. Please like and subscribe to my channel, Dr. Diane Hayden. Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.